Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Manning with lifeafterdeath.com. This is a community for people who have a passion and interest in life after death, for people like you with an interest in spirituality, the afterlife, reincarnation, and near-death experience. And together we are questioning and exploring these topics with an open heart. Now, my guest today is Andrew Harvey. Andrew is an internationally acclaimed poet. He is a novelist, translator, he is a mystical scholar, and he's a spiritual teacher. And he has written and edited over 30 books, including a Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, a book called Turn Me to Gold, which is about the poems of the Sufi Kabir. And also his latest book is Savage Grace. Welcome, Andrew.
Welcome. I'm so fascinated and excited to be with you.
Thank you. Well, you know, the reason that I'm so happy to talk to you is because when I was looking at your work, it seemed like you were really trying to bring spirituality down to earth, you know, down to a world where we can apply it in our day-to-day life and sort of meditation and spirituality in action.
Look, we're in an overwhelming world crisis. The whole of humanity is threatened. Animals are dying at a stupendous rate. There are billions of people living in abject poverty while 1% control the economy, politics, the media. Nobody should be unawake to this.
Yes.
And what's especially exciting to me is that more and more people are really waking up to what's going on. My work is dedicated to three things. The first thing is to bring the essential mystic message to humanity. And that message is that we are all secretly divine. We're all born with an original divine consciousness. And we must realize that and embody that in our lives. The second message that I'm bringing is that this is not rocket science. There are simple practices that every single human being can do, which will over time awaken you to your essential nature and bring you peace and bring you joy and bring you energy and bring you passion for life. The third message is, if you're not awake to this crisis, you are blind. And if you are not thinking, what can I do? You are lazy and selfish and narcissistic. So get going, my friends. Connect with the depth of yourself, and whatever age you are, pour out the rest of your life to help the human race get through the most terrible evolutionary challenge of its whole history and have a great deal of fun doing it, because actually it's the only game in town.
Okay, Andrew, I love your passion. This is why our community is so important to me too, because it's going to attract people like you who care about bringing spirituality. Yes. Now, the second thing you said, which I'm very interested in, and I'd like to sort of pull you back towards it, is the practical.
Pull me wherever you like, Margaret. I'm your slave of love.
Okay, well, the practical things that people can do. I mean, we all know that there are meditation practices, but I'd like to talk about Kabir and about the what you felt were the inspiration that we can get from his writings, and just tell us a little bit about, you know, what are the essential truths of life that he talks about? What is important that we should know?
Thank you so much, because I just brought out a book. It's called Turn Me to Gold. It's my latest book, actually. Right. Savage Grace is my second book. Not to be pedantic about these things.
Okay, corrections.
Turn Me to Gold is 5 years wild work in different places at the busiest time in my life on India's greatest mystical poet, Kabir. Kabir lived in the 15th century. He was born into a family of poor illiterate weavers. He woke up, and he woke up to the essential truth of life, which is we are here to embody the transcendent. We're here to embody the light. Kabir was the most revolutionary of all mystics, because he said, religion is for the birds. Religion is man-made. Religion is a power game. You don't need religion. What you need is direct connection with the divine in the core of your ordinary life.
Yes.
And what he has been able to give all of India for 500 years. He's loved by the Hindus, he's loved by the Sufis. 400 of his poems were incorporated into the Sikh scriptures, and I brought together 108 of his greatest poems with some staggering photographs by a young hotshot Canadian photographer. about Benares, the holy city where he lived,
Yes.
in this book, what he was saying was fundamentally three things. He was saying, don't buy the religious boys club version of truth. They're trying to tell you that you need them to get to God. You don't need anything to get to God but turning up in a relationship with God. The second thing he was saying to the whole human race, he was saying, look, there are very simple ways of turning up. And the most powerful way, and this he says again and again in the most gorgeous ways, he says, the most powerful way is to say the name of God as you love God. If you're a Christian, say Jesus. If you are a Buddhist, say Buddha. If you are a Hindu, say Krishna. It doesn't matter what you say, because all the names don't get anywhere near the nameless one, but there are lenses through which the light can activate you. And the third thing he was saying is that God is not just the light, the eternal light. That's what you see when you wake up. But you also see that everything is crystallized light energy. So the great divine is living as the plant, as your cat, as your annoying family member at the dinner table. And what that realization brings you to is the necessity to work on yourself calmly, so that in every situation you can be present, compassionate, graceful, kind. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, you can
I love this. I have to read some Kabir. I've read Rumi, of course. Everybody's read Rumi, but I will definitely take a look at your book. But thank you. But one thing I wanted
that's very interesting what you said there, because I've spent 40 years recreating Rumi. I was one of the 5 or 6 people who brought Rumi back into this Renaissance.
Yes.
And I've written 5 books on Rumi, and with Coleman Barks and Robert Bly, I've been part of the Rumi Renaissance. But my experience of Rumi is that he, in a way, cooked me to be ready for Kabir's bladed clarity. And I'd like to read you just one of these poems, just to make this. No, I'm going to read you quite a long one, but because it's really important, because it's about this whole thing that we're talking about, and will give everybody a taste of this book and a taste of why Kabir is essential for this.
Can I ask, so can I ask you, and I'm happy that you read, but can I ask you to tie into it, if you can, either during the reading or afterwards, about the specific thing about life after death is about looking at topics that where the spirit, the whole continuum from the time we're born until the time that
what this is about. There's only one life, and the life is eternal. There is no death. Death is going through.
All right, that's what I wanted to ask you. But
You can ask me, and I will give it.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Wherever you go looking for me, this is God speaking. Wherever you go looking for me, I'm already always by your side. I'm not in sacred places. I'm not in temple idols. I'm not in solitary retreats. I'm already always by your side. I'm not in temples or mosques. I'm not in the Kaaba, not in Kailash. I'm already always by your side. I'm not in austerities. I'm not in meditation. I'm not in feasts. I'm not in fasts. I'm not in rituals laid down in sacred texts. I'm not in yogic exercises. Look for me with passionate sincerity. I'll be beside you immediately. Kabir says, Seeker, listen to me. Where your deepest faith is, I am. Yeah. So that's
very powerful. But how did you, in terms of your own, I mean, you're a living being on this planet, and we're all going to die, right? This is a reality. What did the work? Well, we're going to experience some changes in our physical body.
We're going to drop this, but I'm not going to die.
Consciousness is going to.
Neither are you.
So here's the thing. What did you learn, though, about life after death and about the afterlife from reading these so many hundreds of poems by Kabir? What did he have to say about this? About that particular topic?
Kabir says what every mystic knows, which is that there is a deathless consciousness living within us, that it is our life's task to unveil, experience, embody, and enjoy. That has happened to me. I have woken up, and I have had an experience of that deathless consciousness, and it is now stable within me. So I know 2 very important things, that is what Kabir knows, and which are the themes of his work. And that's why I'm translated him. It's not because I found it out through him. I found the most amazing, gorgeous confirmation of what had already been given to me in him, and I wanted everybody to share it. Look, when you wake up, you see that the whole of the cosmos is created out of divine light consciousness. And you know that you are not two with that divine light consciousness. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that if you take a serious mystical path, what happens to you is that you die, but you die to your full self. The full self is created out of trauma, out of separation, out of a cluster of conventions, out of what your parents tell you to do, out of what your society tells you to do, out of your own greed and desire. But if you love God enough in whatever way you interpret God, and if you go through the path, there'll come a moment where you will die to that full self, and what will appear is your deathless self, and then you will know that there is no death. You have to die in this life into the deathless.
Okay, I understand that. I do understand that. So let me take you somewhere with this. I know our time is limited. You've got a lot of other obligations, and I really appreciate you taking this time. But
no, it's joy for me. I can't tell you.
Here's the connection that I'd like you to make. Then, I mean, I don't want to stop and do another video, and we'll just keep going on this topic.
Yes, let's do this. Absolutely.
I know you've got to leave shortly. But in terms of the very first thing you said about the world crisis and about and the savage, what is it called? Savage grace. Yes. You know, that it's actually, there's a need for what you're calling sacred activism. And I think you actually are the founder of an organization focused on this. So tell me about what you think.
Well, I created the global movement of sacred activism.
Okay.
My book, The Hope. This has gone all over the world. The term is mine. And it's being used now in the UN. It's being used at Davos. It's being used everywhere.
What does that mean, though? What does it mean, Andrew? What is social activism?
It's so simple. It's terribly simple. Look, when you unite the deepest spirituality with the clearest, wisest, most focused and radical action, a third holy force is born, which can transform appalling circumstances. And we've seen this at work in the 20th century. This is what Gandhi did. Gandhi united deep universal spirituality with a very clever, savvy technique of long non-violence. And over time, he unseated the greatest empire in the world. Mahatma Gandhi is the apostle of sacred activism. Then we saw Martin Luther King rise up and say to both whites and blacks, look, we're all children of God. And what we need to do to change this appalling system that is creating such racism is to go very, very deep within ourselves to discover that universal truth and to act on it in structural ways to change the system that creates such pain. Lech Walesa did this. The Dalai Lama is doing this. Jane Goodall is doing this. And what this crisis asks of us is that we connect with the universal light within us, the love within us, the compassion within us, and then act together in ways that can truly change the structures of cold evil that are threatening human life and build a new world.
And by doing that, you're actually then, it's like a circle, you're then discovering your divine self in doing that.
Yes.
It's like
discovering it, you're enhancing it.
You're living it, yes.
You're living it, and the joy that you get from that is the greatest imaginable joy. You know, what's so amazing for me is that because of the life I've led in the last 20 years, I've met most of the people who are doing the most amazing work all over the world, from people who are saving the cheetahs in Namibia, to people who are working with prostitutes in Bombay, to people who are healing in amazing ways, to people who are risking their lives in war zones to bring comfort to starving grandmothers. And one thing I can tell you about those people is that they are joyful. They go through hell, they see hell, they witness great suffering, but because they're connected to their deathless self, they radiate energy and joy.
Now, as you're talking, you're reminding me of someone that I used to work with, who I love dearly, was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yeah,
now, I worked with Elizabeth in the 80s to help her with her life, death, and transition workshops. And she had an amazing quote about beautiful people, and that beautiful people don't happen just magically. They happen through, as you said, through the struggle and through the pain, but they find their divine self in giving to others. And she was such an example of that for me.
And she was I met her too many times, and she
Yeah,
was a
amazing.
very ferocious woman.
She was, wasn't she? A triplet. She
Harsh,
was one of triplets,
no
and just
bullshit, and she
crazy.
just
Yeah.
raged against cruelty,
Yes,
but
she
she
did.
radiated purpose and energy and joy too.
Yes, she did very much. So the
Amazing.
sacred activism, I mean, how do you prevent it being political? And how do you then give people tools? I mean, I'm thinking, for example, Pema Chodron in the Tibetan tradition, using the, is it, I never can pronounce it, the Tonglen practice,
Tonglen is,
where,
yes, the most important practice.
it's
Yes.
an amazing practice. And I mean,
Yes.
tell us how people can do things like that. I mean, maybe Tonglen is a little too abstract, but it's simply absorbing the pain and suffering of other people and embracing it and loving them.
Margaret, it has to be political. There's no way in
Well,
which.
tell me how you avoid that.
Let's pretend. I don't want to avoid it being political, because we have to change the structures. We can't just have emotions,
Yes.
do practices, and do little bits of help. We have to change the political, the economic, the social structures that are keeping people imprisoned and causing the genocide of the animals and the extinction of the environment. So it's how you do that that's important. And I believe very much in the way of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, in steady, non-violent protest that embraces your enemies, so-called, doesn't hate them, hates what they do, but not hates their nature. This is a very important distinction.
Look, Andrew, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know you've got to go a long distance across town, and you've got another meeting, so I don't want to take you, but I do have one.
No, I would love to explain to you.
Okay.
I'll ask you the second question, which is, what are the tools that you have?
Okay, let's do the tools. That was where I was trying to go, because our community is very interested in practical. What do I do? How can I? So it's 7 ways that you can do this. So tell us 3 ways.
Well, I would love that, because if you read my book, The Hope, you'll see that it's a map with very pragmatic tools. So there are 5 forms of service and 5 forms of practice. The 5 forms of service are: serve God as you understand it with passion and praise. Serve yourself and preserve yourself by 5 kinds of sacred practice. And these are the kinds of practice that everybody needs who want to turn up. So you need cool practices which calm you down. And you need to be in touch with your divine peaceful self. And that is so easy through meditation or saying the name of God or walking meditation. Those are 3 that can really work there. Then you need hot practices, because you need to heat up your heart, because your heart gets bashed about by the pain of life. And the most important practices are practices of adoration, of passionate praise of God, and deep, deep dwelling in the heart. There are Sufi practices to awaken the heart. There are Hindu practices. There are wonderful Christian practices of the Sacred Heart that are powerful for that. Then you need a very strong prayer practice. And the best prayer you could ever say is, "Not your will, but my will," which is my favorite prayer. It's Jesus' prayer. If you just say that for the rest of your life, you'll be fine. The 4th practice that you need is a really juicy, sacred, physical practice. So I would say to all of you, if you want the energy to do the work, now practice yoga, do sacred dance, do something with your body that gives you elation and joy.
The Tibetan rites are good.
Is shadow work, because you constantly have to clean your shadow, because otherwise you get arrogant or agonized or think that you know everything, or become self-righteous and hate the Republicans or the Democrats or whatever, and that's not going to help. So if you have those 5 practices with those 5 forms of service, which are service to God, service to yourself, service to the world community, including animals, choosing a mission with real truth. And that mission is always best chosen by asking yourself a question. One question will guide you to your mission. And the question that I've been spreading all over the world, which has guided hundreds of thousands of people to find their mission, is: what breaks your heart the most about this world? What can you hardly bear to think about? Is it poor children starving? Is it the refugees being blocked at the wall? Is it old women cradling the bodies of their dismembered children burst from a bomb? What is it? Is it animals?
Mm-hmm.
Find that heartbreak, you'll find your passion, and then devote your resources in what I call networks of grace, gathering people around you who
Yes.
care about the same passion, and start doing something. You'll be filled with purpose, you'll be filled with meaning, you'll be filled with joy, and you'll have a hell of a lot of fun doing it instead of being miserable and paralyzed. So everything is available for us down home, practically, pragmatically, to mobilize us in the most thrilling ways. And that's why I've done the work I've done to produce these maps. And you said Tonglen. Tonglen, what could be more thrilling than Tonglen? But
Yeah,
there's so many
Tonglen's a great
maps
practice,
available.
especially when you are facing anger in yourself and anger, you can't express that anger, to give it
Right.
back out. That's a really, really helpful practice.
But sometimes it's good to express your anger, because anger is not always your enemy. The
Yes,
tantric Buddhists tell you that anger can help you get clear, but killing people from that anger is naughty.
that's
But
not a good thing. But Andrew,
crystallizing your anger is good.
this is a great conversation. I've really, really enjoyed this. But one thing I was going to ask you is, in terms of, okay, let's take a break. Let's just pause for a second, because
Yes.
I do have a weird question for you that actually isn't one.
Don't worry. I'm
list.
used to weird. I can tell you, I've been
No,
teaching for 30 years. Weird is normal.
no. There's a very good book. It's the Power of Character. I can't think of the name of the author now. It's off my head. But
Power of character. Great
yeah.
title.
But what it was about, he answered this question, and it actually is related to life after death and to approaching death. And I know there's another practice, the Power, I think it's Power, which is all about
yeah.
which is another one that, in addition to Tonglen, which is where you basically are meditating on giving goodness back to the world. This is where you're saying, well, I may leave it and this body may be going anyway, but that's another one. But tell us, in this Power of Character, he asks a very, very simple question, and that is, why do we age?
Well, we age.
Why do we age? And
in age. Once you connect with the deathless part of yourself, your body might get a few wrinkles, but actually you get younger and younger.
That's an interesting promise.
Yes, it's a promise. Look at me. I'm 66 years old. I have more energy now than I did at 17. I'm much happier than I was at 17. I'm much more effective. I have much more friends. Every moment of my day is filled with the joy of the spirit, and I feel much younger than I did at 17, when I was laden with neurosis and suffering and felt that the world was never going to acknowledge anything that I cared about. I know now, very different. And look at the youngest person on the planet is the Dalai Lama, and he's 82, and being around him makes every single person want to sing and dance like
he is pretty amazing.
What aging is really about.
Well, look, here's the thing. I've got one other question for you. Now,
yes, darling, I'm ready.
Okay. In my introduction to you, Andrew, I said that you were a spiritual or mystic scholar and a spiritual teacher. Tell us why you think the modern world needs mystics, more mystics. I mean, how do we find meaning in these confusing times? And we can close on that question, because it's where we started. It's a circle.
Well, I believe everybody's a closet mystic. It's the last closet that everybody has to come out with. We've gone out of all the other closets.
What does that mean? What does a mystic look like?
Well, it looks like you, looks like me, looks like the granny in the grocery store. If the mystics are true, and they're telling us the truth, that we are all born with the original divine consciousness, then that means that everybody is a latent mystic. All that we need to do is to start doing the simple practices that can make that consciousness available to us. And the reason why it's so important for everybody is because you don't have the clue what life really is until you start to wake up, because then you realize life may have all of these terrible ordeals and challenges, but actually it is a glorious, joy-filled, spirit-irradiated experience. And when you know that, you can meet all the challenges, all the suffering that life inevitably brings with equanimity and even with gratitude. And when you know that, you can turn up in this world crisis without being paralyzed by what's happening at whatever age you are, and with a twinkle in your eye and outstretched hands and calm, grounded practices, doing calmly from all of your resources and gifts, whatever the heaven you can, to be of help to your fellow human beings. This is the whole point of life. This is the whole point of the messages of all the prophets. This is what the Buddha is saying. This is what Ramakrishna is saying. This is what Jesus is saying. It's time to listen. It's time to connect with the inner mystic. And it's time to join the mystic to the activist within you and birth yourself as a ragged, wonderful, vibrant, joyful, serving human being. And if you don't do it now, when will you do it? Because this is the biggest crisis the world's ever faced. And the purpose of this crisis is not to destroy the world, but to bitch slap all of us into becoming real, down home, mystical, sacred activists in whatever way is natural to us. That's
it's very funny to talk to you because I'm like you, I'm in my 60s, well, I'm actually almost 70, and
look at you, you're gorgeous. I think you look so beautiful.
Thank you. But the point here is that I studied when I was in my 20s with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche in Boulder.
God. Oh, what a madman. What a brilliant
he was crazy. And you remind me of him in a very, very beautiful way. It's actually...
Thank you. I'm very honored by that. I mean, I think he's totally crazy, but God, what amazing books he wrote.
Well, the reason I thought of it was this meditation in action. He wrote the book, I think one of his first ones which is really what you're saying, is that you've got to take your practice and your meditation into action and doing it like...
It's not just what I'm saying, it's what everybody's saying. Jesus was that. The great vision of Tibetan Buddhism is that. Hinduism at its greatest is that. Everybody knows that love doesn't mean anything unless it's a verb.
Yeah, your practice is your life. Do you know, okay, so you obviously are very busy living. You're not thinking a lot about dying at the moment.
There is no dying.
Okay,
Don't think about dying. Connect with the deathless. You realize that dying is just going through a door into another room. All the people that have died are not dead. They're around us. They're connectable with in dreams. You can go to Bali and sit with an amazing trance person in a village, and your granny will talk to you. Amazing things happen. Death is a fantasy. There is only eternal life.
So what happens to your consciousness then?
Nothing. What you earn here in your consciousness is all you take across the waters of death. So if you awaken to the deathless here, death will be simply the dropping of the cloak of your body and going naked to the naked light in great joy. This is the unanimous experience of all of the great mystics. Rumi said at the end of his life, he said, "When I die, I will die at the breast of the All-Merciful. What am I saying? How can the lover ever die?"
He was remarkable. Okay.
Well, no, he's not remarkable. He's you and I woken up. Everybody listening can have that experience. Don't think that these mystics like Rumi and Kabir are so special that you'll never be able to have their experience. You can have their experience if you turn up humbly and do the work of turning your being to God. You know that. You've had this experience. I can tell from your naughty face that there's great joy in your life. Why are we on the earth? We're on the earth to have this overwhelming experience of knowing ourselves deathless, and then to live from that place, giving everything that we have, gambling our lives away for God. That's why we're here, and it's the only way we'll have tremendous joy. Let's go for it.
I totally agree with you. It's been an absolute thrill talking with you. I'm actually quite honored, and I meant to say that at the very beginning, because you have got an incredible pedigree of writing and research, and I read your life story in terms of where you've been in your life and the challenges you've had, and I'm
but I could be an asshole, because you can have people with a pedigree and still, but the person...
And when I meant pedigree, I didn't mean pedigree. I just meant experience pedigree.
I know. Oh, God, I've got a pedigree and an experience, but the truth is that none of that really matters. The most important thing is that God has blessed me with awakening and blessed you with awakening. It doesn't matter how many books you write, what experience. There are a lot of people who've written a lot of books and have an amazing pedigree who don't know because they haven't been blessed. I've been blessed. You've been blessed. May all the people listening here know that grace is pouring down on all of us to wake us up so that we can together be and do something amazing for this world right now.
Well, I like the urgency. I agree with you that it's time, and I'm hoping that really this whole community of lifeafterdeath.com is going to inspire and amplify and fuel this this message. And I'm really happy that we had this chance to talk with you. We didn't stay on one topic. We did a
No, we never
normally these interviews are quite short, and we do them in short sessions. But I'm happy we kept going because I think we covered a lot of territory that was valuable for people.
Thank you.
And I would encourage people to go out to your website, which is andrewharvey.net.
And can I encourage you to just buy this book, because you get everything you need from Kabir. This is why I spent 5 years doing it. Turned me to gold. It wasn't for me. It was for you, so that you could get this naked, clear vision of universal life down from the greatest mystical master of humanity.
Well,
so
thank you for that. We will encourage. I encourage people to check out your site and also to pick up the book. And we'll put a link to all of this in the article that we'll do with the video. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time. It's been wonderful chatting with you. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Life After Death YouTube channel and visit our website at lifeafterdeath.com. We are a community of people who are fascinated by the topic of life after death and subjects like near-death experience, the afterlife, reincarnation, and spirituality. Together, we are exploring and discovering these topics together with curiosity and an open heart.